because of their goals. There are footballers you remember because of their scandals. And then there's someone like Luciano Re Cecconi. To the casual fan, his name means nothing. But to those who were paying attention in the shadows of the 1970s, he was a storm cloaked in silence. Re Cecconi wasn't flashy. He didn't seek fame. He wasn't interested in endorsements or the spotlight. Instead, he let his feet do the talking. Born in Italy, forged in the grit of post-war football, Re Cecconi wasn't just a player. He was a phantom on the pitch. Fast, tactical, precise. You wouldn't see him coming. You'd just feel the consequences when he passed you by. They called him the Blond Angel. Not because of his looks, but because of the way he floated across the midfield, always exactly where he needed to be. He was the type of player who didn't smile much in interviews. But his teammates, they trusted him with their lives. He had that rare presence, the kind that doesn't demand attention, but commands it. When Lazio won the Serie A in 1974, he was at the heart of it. Not the headline star, not the top scorer, but the soul of the system. And then, just when his legacy was starting to take shape, he was gone. Not injured, not traded, not retired. Dead, shot, inside a store, in broad daylight. And that's where the mystery begins. Luciano Re Cecconi wasn't born for luxury. He was born in 1948, in Nerviano, a small town near Milan, during a time when Italy was still licking its wounds from the war. It was a nation rebuilding itself, stone by stone, soul by soul. And in that chaos, football became more than just a sport. It became an escape. For Re Cecconi, it became a mission. He started at Pro Patria, a lower division team where hard tackles and dirty boots were the norm. He wasn't the kind of player to dazzle with step-overs or circus tricks. No, Luciano was a grinder, a man of discipline. In 1970, he joined Foggia and caught the eye of national scouts. Within just a couple of years, he had made the jump to SS Lazio, a team trying to shake off mediocrity and force its way into Italian football history. And Re Cecconi became one of their cornerstones. While the team boasted stars like Giorgio Chinaglia, flamboyant, loud, larger than life, Re Cecconi was the exact opposite. Quiet, cold, clinical. The kind of midfielder every manager dreams of. He ran for others, covered their mistakes. He was the safety net nobody noticed until he wasn't there. When Lazio defied the odds and won their first ever Scudetto in 1974, most headlines praised Chinaglia. But inside the dressing room, every player knew, without Re Cecconi, that title wouldn't exist. He was never a superstar. He never wanted to be one. He was a soldier in a war that played out on green grass, in front of screaming crowds, under blinding floodlights. And just like a soldier, he followed orders, stayed quiet, fought with honor, until one day a joke cost him everything. It was supposed to be an ordinary afternoon. Luciano Re Cecconi was 28 years old, in the prime of his career, still starting for Lazio, still respected, still feared. But on that day, he made one mistake. He walked into a jewelry store in Rome, a store he had visited before. The owner, Bruno Taboccini, was a friend. The place was familiar, comfortable. Re Cecconi had a reputation for being serious on the field, but off the pitch, he liked to laugh. And that day, he decided to play a joke. He stepped inside, put his hand in his pocket, and said, "This is a hold-up. No weapon, no threat, just words." He thought Taboccini would laugh, that they'd joke about it. But this was 1970s Rome. The city was tense, robberies were common, armed men were unpredictable. Taboccini didn't laugh. He reached under the counter. Bang! One shot, straight to the chest. Luciano Re Cecconi collapsed on the floor. The silence that followed was deafening. Cut to police photos, a cold report, a covered body on the store floor. No ambulance could save him. By the time paramedics arrived, it was already over. Re Cecconi, Serie A champion, national team midfielder, one of Italy's quiet titans, was gone. The city froze. The football world went still. One moment, he was laughing. The next, he was a statistic. But here's where it gets darker. There was no trial, no sentence. Tabacchini claimed self-defense, and that was enough. He pulled the trigger and walked free, and no one asked why. Officially, it was ruled an accident, a misunderstanding, a tragic joke that went horribly wrong. But not everyone believed that. In the bars of Rome, the locker rooms of Lazio, the alleys where ultras gathered, people whispered, "That doesn't make sense." Re Cecconi wasn't stupid. He wouldn't fake a robbery in broad daylight without thinking twice. Why would a man with everything to lose walk into a shop and pretend to be an armed robber without even smiling? Why was there no surveillance footage released? Why were the store's employees never questioned publicly? Why was Bruno Tabacchini never truly investigated? Some believe Re Cecconi was already being watched. He had made enemies, not just on the field, but off it. Rumors swirled that he had information about corruption in Italian football, match fixing, dirty money, gambling ties. Others claimed he had clashed with high-ranking officials inside Lazio, that he wanted out, that he had threatened to expose secrets buried deep within the club's walls. Then came the most chilling theory. He wasn't playing a prank at all. He walked into that store because he was lured there. He spoke those words under duress. And Tabacchini? He wasn't scared. He was ready. A pretext, a planned killing, made to look like an accident, wrapped in legal immunity. And because the man who died wasn't a celebrity, wasn't rich, wasn't political, nobody pushed for justice. The case went quiet. Luciano Re Cecconi's death became just another line in the archives, closed, forgotten, but not by everyone. The news of Luciano Re Cecconi's death sent a wave of shock through Italian football. But what followed was even more disturbing. There was no public outrage, no protest, no massive funeral televised for the nation. Lazio released a short statement. 2 paragraphs, nothing more. No tributes, no official club memorial, no jersey retirement. The man who helped them win their first Serie A title was buried with barely a whisper. Even his teammates, many stayed quiet. Some gave vague interviews. Some avoided the topic entirely. Why? Was it fear? Or something more? The media called it a sad accident and quickly moved on. There were bigger headlines, political scandals, rising crime. In the chaos of 1970s Italy, Re Cecconi was forgotten like yesterday's news. But the fans, some remembered, in the Curva Nord, the Ultras section of Lazio's stadium, there were murmurs. Painted tributes appeared, stickers, graffiti, Cecco Vive, justice for Luciano. But they were always removed. Was it stadium policy or something more coordinated? A few journalists tried digging deeper. Every time, their stories were either buried or quietly dropped. One even claimed he was warned off the case, told to leave the past buried. Why? Who stood to benefit from keeping Re Cecconi's death quiet? That question still echoes in the silence. Luciano Re Cecconi died in 1977. But did he ever truly leave? Those who were close to him say they still feel him. Not in a supernatural way, not in ghost stories, but in moments. In strange silences, in echoes that don't make sense. Former Lazio staff have reported hearing footsteps in the halls long after the stadium has emptied. A security guard once claimed he saw a man in a tracksuit walking the training ground at night. Blonde hair, broad shoulders. When he called out, the figure vanished. Fans have noticed something too. Since Re Cecconi's death, Lazio has never quite felt whole. Yes, they've had success. They've won titles. But something lingers. A strange energy. A reminder. In 2015, during renovations at Lazio's Formello training center, construction workers discovered an old locker behind a sealed wall. Inside, a pair of vintage boots, a Lazio jersey with the number 8, and a photo of Luciano, creased, faded, but unmistakable. Nobody knows who sealed it in. Nobody claimed it. Some call it coincidence. Others, a sign. And then, there's the strangest part of all. Every January 18th, the day he died, the stadium lights at Formello flicker. It's happened multiple times, never explained, never fixed. The club says it's a wiring issue, but those who believe in signs, they think it's Cecco, still there, still waiting. For decades, Luciano Re Cecconi's death was left untouched, an open and shut case, filed away, left to rot in a dusty cabinet. But then came a new generation, journalists, fans, researchers, obsessed with the silence. And one question they all kept asking: what really happened in that jewelry store? In 2010, an independent investigative podcast in Italy titled Zona d'Ombra, Shadow Zone, picked up Re Cecconi's story. They dug deep. Interviews with forgotten witnesses, police reports no longer in the archives, and forensic photos that had never been seen publicly. What they found raised chilling questions. The shopkeeper, Bruno Tabacchini, had ties to far-right paramilitary groups in the 70s, something never mentioned in the official reports. The angle of the bullet wound didn't align with Tabacchini's version of events. A second witness, who had originally stated they heard Re Cecconi say it's a joke, was never interviewed by police. Even more disturbing, audio from a private phone call made just hours after the shooting surfaced, with Tabacchini allegedly saying, "I did what had to be done. No one will question it." Legal experts say the evidence, while compelling, isn't enough to reopen the case officially. But that hasn't stopped the public. Reddit forums, Twitter threads, YouTube exposés. Re Cecconi's story has become a digital cold case, reawakened by a generation obsessed with justice and with stories that don't add up. A former Lazio director even said in a leaked interview, "We were told to move on, not to stir things, but some of us never did." More and more, the myth of Cecco grows, not as a player, not even as a man, but as a mystery, one Italy may never fully solve. Luciano Re Cecconi was only 28 years old, at the peak of his career, a father, a husband, a joker, a man whose life was snatched in an instant by a gunshot that still echoes louder than any goal he ever scored. But when you peel back the layers of this tragedy, you realize it wasn't just a joke gone wrong. It was a product of the paranoia of 1970s Italy, a country gripped by fear, where guns came quicker than reason, where everyone saw shadows behind every corner, even in the smile of a footballer. The official story tells us he died in a prank, but the unofficial story, that's more complex, more human, more terrifying. Because what if it wasn't a prank? What if it was a hit? What if it was a cover-up? What if Cecco knew something, or someone, he shouldn't have? We may never know. The case is closed. The shooter walked free. And the truth? It died with Luciano. But the legacy, the mystery, the unanswered questions, they're still alive. In the forums, in the chants of Lazio Ultras, in every YouTube comment that ends with "Justice for Cecco." This wasn't just a death. It was an erasure of potential, of peace, of a man who wanted to make people laugh, and instead became football's most tragic ghost. Cut to black. Soft whisper, "It's a joke."